There are moments that divide a life into before and after. Moments so sudden, so violent, that even time refuses to move past them. For Claire, that moment was the crash. 1 second, headlights. The next, silence. And everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and truth shattered like glass. But what if the accident wasn't an accident? What if memory itself is lying to her? Because sometimes the human mind doesn't protect us with truth, protects us with illusion. And when the past begins to whisper back, when faces return that were supposed to be gone, you start to wonder, what really survived that night? You or your guilt? Welcome to the crash, where every reflection hides a secret, and every truth comes at the cost of remembering. Started with light, blinding white, merciless light, and then nothing. A silence so complete that it didn't feel like silence at all. Felt like absence. When she woke up, there was glass in her hair, the taste of metal in her mouth, a smell she would never forget. Gasoline, smoke, and something else. Something burnt. She blinked, tried to remember, tried to anchor herself in something that made sense. The steering wheel was twisted. The airbag hung limp. And beside her, a voice, a whisper, then a groan. "Ethan," she murmured, or maybe just thought she did. But no one answered. She doesn't remember how long she sat there. Could have been seconds, could have been hours. Time fractures after a crash. Moments bend. Memories fold in on themselves. She turned her head, every movement electric with pain. The passenger seat was empty. The door was open. Blood, not hers. The road outside was slick, silver under the rain. Headlights blinked in the distance like dying stars. She stumbled out of the car, one shoe missing. The world tilted sideways. Her breath made clouds in the cold. And there, 20 feet away, lay Ethan. Still. They say when something traumatic happens, the brain protects you. It seals away what you can't survive remembering. It edits, reshapes, censors. She doesn't remember screaming. She doesn't remember the sirens. She only remembers after. The hospital, the questions, the blank stares, and the moment the doctor said, "He didn't make it." The words didn't land immediately. They just hung in the air, heavy and unreal. Like she was underwater, and sound reached her too late. People brought flowers. They said words like tragedy and fate. They touched her shoulder with pity in their eyes. But all she could think was, should have been me, because it was her hands on the wheel. Her decision to drive that night. Her mistake, her fault. Or was it? In the weeks that followed, guilt became her shadow. It followed her into every room, every mirror, every dream. She stopped answering the phone, stopped opening curtains, stopped speaking his name aloud. The world kept spinning, but she was trapped in the moment it stopped. One night, she heard it again. The sound that started everything, the crash. But this time it wasn't outside. It was in her head, over and over, like a loop she couldn't break. The tires skidding, the glass shattering, the scream. Except, it wasn't her voice screaming. It was his. That's when the dreams began. In them, Ethan was alive, standing by the road, drenched in rain, watching her. Sometimes he said nothing. Sometimes he whispered, "You left me." And sometimes he smiled. A small, haunting smile that felt more like a question than forgiveness. She'd wake up shaking, drenched in sweat, her heart racing like the engine before the crash. Days turned into weeks, then months. But the dreams never stopped. So when she received the letter, she almost didn't open it. No return address, just her name written in neat, familiar handwriting. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. "I know what really happened that night. Meet me at the cabin if you want the truth." No signature, just one word at the bottom. E. Her first thought was denial. Couldn't be him. Ethan was dead. But the handwriting, she knew it. Every curve, every tilt, every mark. The cabin. Their old weekend place by the lake. A place they hadn't visited in over a year. Her chest tightened. Was it possible? Could he have survived? Or was this someone else? playing a cruel, twisted game? She told herself not to go. She told herself it was madness. But guilt has a way of rewriting logic. When the past whispers, you listen even if it kills you. So the next morning, she packed a bag, keys, phone, a flashlight, and drove. The road to the lake felt longer than she remembered. The trees leaned closer, as if they were listening. Every sound, every crunch of gravel echoed too loud. When she reached the cabin, it looked exactly as it had years ago, except colder, hollow. She stepped inside. The air smelled like dust and old wood. And then, something else. Cologne. His cologne. "Ethan?" she whispered. Silence. Her flashlight beam swept across the room. The couch, the table, the fireplace. Everything in its place. Except for one thing. On the table, a photo. Of them. Taken just a week before the crash. Someone had written across it in red ink. "You don't remember everything." Her knees went weak. She gripped the table for balance. 1,000 questions collided in her mind. Who left this? Why now? What did she forget? And then she heard it, a soft creak from upstairs. Slow, deliberate, human. She froze. The flashlight trembled in her hand. She took a breath and whispered into the dark. "Ethan?" No answer. But from the shadows above, a voice, low, almost calm, replied, "You shouldn't have come back." The voice was unmistakable, low, measured, almost familiar, but something was wrong with it, like hearing a song you once loved, now slightly off-key. She turned slowly toward the staircase. Her flashlight beam shook across the walls, catching dust and framed photos that stared back like witnesses. No movement, no silhouette, just silence, thick and waiting. Her throat went dry. She managed a whisper. "Who's there?" No reply, only the echo of her own voice, folding back into itself. Logic screamed at her to leave, but curiosity, that old, fatal companion, anchored her to the floor, because somewhere beneath the fear, a thought pulsed quietly. What if it really is him? She stepped toward the staircase. Each step creaked, protesting her weight. The air felt colder here, like the house was holding its breath. Halfway up, she heard it again. A soft, rhythmic tapping. Steady, intentional. It stopped the moment she reached the landing. Her beam caught the hallway. The guest room door was open. Inside, a single lamp glowed dimly, casting long shadows across the floorboards. And then she saw it, a notebook, open on the desk. Pages filled with familiar handwriting. Her heart seized. It was Ethan's journal. The last entry dated 2 days after the crash. She blinked, reading each line twice, as though comprehension required pain to be absorbed slowly. "She doesn't remember. I saw her at the hospital. She looked through me, like I wasn't there. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I'm not supposed to be. But I can't leave until she remembers what she did." Her hands trembled. She whispered aloud, "What I did." Memory flickered, a flash of headlights, Ethan's hand reaching for her, a voice shouting, but it wasn't his. Someone else had been in the car. A third voice. She gasped, clutching her head as pain rippled behind her eyes. The notebook slipped from her hand, pages fluttering open like wings. A photograph slid out and landed face up. It showed Ethan, and beside him, a woman, smiling, familiar, herself, except not quite. She studied the photo. The hair was longer, the smile sharper, the eyes different somehow, and scrawled across the bottom, in Ethan's handwriting, "She isn't who she says she is." She stumbled backward, breath shallow, pulse thundering. What did he mean? Her mind spun through fragments, conversations, arguments, half-remembered nights blurred by pills and guilt. She remembered the therapy sessions, the blackouts, the confusion, the way Ethan had started looking at her differently. In those last few weeks, like he was scared. The brain does strange things after trauma. It edits, deletes, protects. But sometimes it protects too much. And sometimes, the very thing you forget. is the thing that defines you. She turned to the window. Rain lashed against the glass. Lightning flashed, and in that split second of light, she saw him, standing outside, soaked to the bone, watching her. Ethan. Her body froze. Every instinct screamed run. But her legs didn't move, because what she saw next didn't belong to the living. His eyes were wrong, hollow, colorless, his skin too pale, too thin against the rain. He smiled, and his lips formed the words, "You remember now?" Then the light blinked, and he was gone. She didn't scream this time. She didn't even cry. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the photo like an anchor, because deep down she knew that wasn't just a dream or a trick of grief. That was memory, bleeding through, and the question now wasn't if Ethan was real. It was what version of him still existed. Sleep came in fragments that night. When she finally drifted off, the dream returned, but different. She was back in the car. Rain against the windshield. Ethan in the passenger seat, and someone else in the back. She turned the mirror, but the reflection didn't match. The woman in the back seat looked like her, but older, colder, eyes sharp with intent. She said one word, "Drive," and she did. The crash came again. Metal, fire, silence. Only this time, she heard the third voice whisper, "You can't bury me." She woke up gasping. The clock read 3:17 a.m., and from downstairs, a faint creak. Someone or something was moving. She grabbed her phone. No signal. The storm had killed it. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness as she stepped into the hall. The sound came again. Not footsteps this time, but a dragging noise. She reached the bottom of the stairs and froze. The front door was open. Rain poured in across the wooden floor. And in the doorway, a single wet footprint. Bare. Human. She knew now. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. Ethan's death wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the truth. And the truth was coming for her, step by step, memory by memory, until nothing was left to hide behind. The morning came gray and thin, a light without warmth. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried that metallic scent, the smell of something unresolved. She hadn't slept. She'd sat all night by the front door, staring at that single, perfect footprint. It had dried now, but the mark remained, a shadow of proof that something or someone had entered. She told herself it was a hallucination. Trauma, exhaustion, grief. The brain can conjure what the heart refuses to accept. But deep down she wasn't sure. Because when she'd looked into the mirror earlier that morning, she'd seen him, Ethan, standing behind her, for half a breath, his reflection clearer than her own. She turned instantly. Nothing. But in the mirror, his outline lingered, like light refusing to fade. And there, at the bottom corner of the glass, she saw it. Letters, drawn into the fog of her breath. Tell the truth. She stood there for minutes, maybe more, her chest a cage of pounding echoes. What truth? Hadn't she already lived through enough? Hadn't she already paid the price? But guilt. Guilt doesn't care about time. It waits, festers, and sometimes it finds a way to speak. She began combing through the house, every drawer, every cabinet, searching for something that might explain the letter, the journal, the reflection. In the bedroom closet, she found a box, old, dusty, wrapped with a cracked leather strap. Inside, a collection of photographs, some familiar, some foreign. She pulled one out. It showed her standing beside Ethan and another man. His face was blurred, motion caught mid-turn, but something about the shoulders, the shape of his hand, tugged at her memory. On the back of the photo, written in Ethan's handwriting, "He knows. Don't let her remember." Her pulse quickened. The edges of reality started to shimmer. She pressed her temples, as flashes flickered behind her eyelids. Laughter. A glass raised in a toast. A whisper. A hand gripping her wrist too tightly. And then, the road. The sound of tires screaming. She opened her eyes, gasping. Her reflection stared back from the mirror across the room. Only it wasn't moving. Her reflection stayed still, while she reached up to touch her face. Her body froze. Her reflection blinked, a fraction too late. Then it smiled. Not a kind smile, a knowing one. The lips formed words, but no sound came out. And yet she understood. "Do you remember now?" She stumbled back, the mirror shattering as her arm knocked it from the wall. Fragments rained down, each shard holding a sliver of her face. 1,000 broken versions of herself staring up, accusing. She whispered, "What did I do?" And somewhere in the dark corners of the room, a voice answered, not Ethan's, but her own. "You killed him." Her knees gave way. She pressed her palms against her ears. No, it was an accident. I didn't mean." But the voice continued, cold, calm, cruel. "You were fighting. He tried to stop you. You grabbed the wheel." Her mind recoiled. It wasn't true. Couldn't be true. Except, she remembered his hand on her wrist. His voice angry, pleading. And her own scream, "Let me drive." Tears burned her eyes. The room spun. The mirror shards shimmered like pieces of the past, each one reflecting a different moment she had buried. She crawled to one piece and picked it up. Her reflection inside smiled again. "You can't bury guilt," it whispered. "You can only live with it, or let it consume you." She dropped the shard. When the mind breaks, it doesn't announce it. It just starts rearranging things. Memories, emotions, identities, until truth becomes indistinguishable from illusion. She sat there for hours, the morning light shifting slowly across the floor. At some point, she heard the faint hum of a car engine outside. Her heart leapt. For a moment she thought, "He's back." But when she looked through the window, it wasn't Ethan. It was a black sedan, parked, engine running, and a figure inside, watching the house. She couldn't make out their face. Tinted glass, stillness, deliberate. She blinked, and the car was gone. Just gone. Like it had never been there. She wondered if she was losing her mind. If she ever truly found it again after the crash. Maybe the letter wasn't from Ethan. Maybe she wrote it to herself. A message from the buried parts of her consciousness. Maybe she'd been chasing her own ghost this whole time. But then she saw it. On the window pane. Faint fingerprints. Still wet. Not hers. Too large. And beneath them, 3 words. Drawn in condensation. "Not your fault." Her breath caught. For the first time since that night, something inside her softened. Could Ethan, whatever was left of him, be forgiving her? Or was her mind now so fractured that forgiveness had to come wearing his voice? Outside, the storm began again. Raindrops trailing down the glass like tears. She sat in the dim light, her reflection split across the broken shards, each fragment whispering a different truth. And somewhere deep within, she knew she was close. Close to the moment she'd spent a year running from. The moment that would tell her what really happened that night. The night of the crash. The night she stopped being who she thought she was. Night again. Hours have passed, maybe days. Time has started to lose its shape, like the world itself is holding its breath. She's sitting in the living room, wrapped in a blanket that still smells faintly of Ethan. On the coffee table, the letter, the photos, and a single piece of broken mirror reflecting her eye. The ghost of her reflection stares back, as if waiting for her to finally admit something. The truth, she thinks, isn't buried in the past. It's buried in denial. You can spend years running from guilt, but it will find its way home, like a lost child knocking on the same locked door. She picks up the photograph again, the one with Ethan and the blurred man beside him. She runs her finger over the face, the blurred outline flickering under the light. And then she remembers. Flash. A bar. Laughter. The clinking of glasses. That night, there had been 3 of them in the car. Ethan in the passenger seat, her in the driver's seat, and the man in the back, the one whose face had been erased by the crash, and by her own mind. His name surfaces like a ghost breaking through ice. Liam, Ethan's friend. The one who had whispered secrets when Ethan wasn't listening. The one who made her feel seen, alive, reckless. That night hadn't been an accident. Not fully. There had been shouting. Ethan's voice sharp, desperate. Liam's drunk, laughing. Her crying, hands shaking on the wheel. The road slick with rain. The curve too sharp. And then, the scream, the metal, the sound of glass turning to dust. When she woke, there was silence. Rain dripping through the cracked windshield. The smell of gasoline. Ethan's body slumped forward. Liam's seat empty. Gone. She had called out for him. Once, twice. But no answer. And then she saw it. A trail of blood leading into the woods. She'd followed it for a few steps before the headlights died, leaving her alone with the storm and the dark. When she stumbled back to the car, the only thing left was Ethan's ring, glinting faintly in the rain. She had picked it up and walked away. She didn't call the police, didn't call anyone, because something inside her whispered, "You caused this." And when guilt becomes unbearable, you start rewriting the truth until it fits the version you can survive. She buries her face in her hands. All this time, the letters, the voices, the mirror, they weren't hauntings. They were memories, fragments of a truth she couldn't face. Ethan hadn't been warning her. He'd been forgiving her. And Liam, the ghost in the glass, wasn't dead. He had disappeared that night. And maybe he had come back. Her head jerks up. Another knock. Slow. Measured. She walks to the door, bare feet silent on the wooden floor. Through the peephole, a man, face shadowed, motionless. She opens the door. Rain spills in cold against her skin. The man lifts his face. Older. Scar on his temple. Eyes familiar. "Hello, Claire," he says softly. Her throat tightens. That voice, she knows it. "Liam." He nods. "Been a long time. I thought you were dead," she whispers. "I was," he says. "Or maybe I should have been. You didn't look back." Her eyes blur with tears. "I tried to." "No." He steps closer, his expression unreadable. "You tried to forget. You buried it. And me." He tells her what happened. How he crawled out of the wreck, bleeding. How he wandered through the woods until someone found him. How he woke up days later in a hospital miles away. No memory, no name. And when it finally returned, so did the anger. But then, he says quietly, so did the guilt. Because he had been the one who grabbed the wheel first. He had shouted, "Let's see if he still trusts you now." The car had swerved. Ethan had tried to stop him. And she had tried to take control. They all had. And that's why it ended. Guilt is a circle. It doesn't belong to one person. It binds everyone who touched the same moment of destruction. Liam lowers his gaze. "I thought I wanted revenge," he murmurs. "But seeing you now, I just want it to end." She steps back, tears on her cheeks. The storm outside howls, as if the world itself wants to wash the night clean. She whispers, "Then tell me the truth." He looks at her, eyes wet with something between fury and forgiveness. "The truth," he says. "The truth is we all killed him. But you're the only one who's been dying ever since." He leaves, walks into the storm until the darkness swallows him whole. She doesn't stop him. She just stands there, the cold wind cutting through her guilt like glass. When the door closes, she walks back to the mirror, now fractured, glinting under the dim light. She kneels before it, touches a shard, and for the first time, her reflection moves with her. No ghosts, no delays, just her, broken but real. She whispers, "I remember," and the reflection whispers back, calm, steady, final, "Then you can live again." In the silence that follows, the truth feels lighter than the lie ever did. The wreckage remains, but beneath it, something like peace, mourning. For the first time in what feels like forever, the light is gentle. It spills through the blinds, gold and soft, brushing over the furniture like forgiveness made visible. Claire stands by the window. The storm has passed. The air smells of rain and soil and second chances. She hasn't slept. But the exhaustion in her eyes isn't torment anymore. It's clarity. The kind that arrives only after truth has stripped you bare. On the table, the pieces of the broken mirror have been gathered into a small glass bowl. No longer a threat, just fragments of what once reflected a lie. She picks one up and turns it in the light. For the first time, she doesn't see a ghost staring back. She sees a woman. Haunted, yes, but alive. Healing, she realizes, doesn't come with thunder. Comes quietly, like dawn. The night doesn't vanish in an instant. It fades gently, as light insists its way in. She steps outside. The neighborhood looks different now, not because it has changed, but because she has. The road where the accident happened is just a few miles away. For years, she's avoided it. Now she walks toward it. The asphalt is cracked in places, the skid marks long faded. To anyone else, it's just another turn on an empty stretch of road. To her, it's the edge of the world. She stands where the guardrail bends, the same curve that swallowed her life whole. Birds call in the trees. Water drips from leaves. The world, indifferent yet kind, moves on. She kneels and places something on the ground. Ethan's ring. Catches the light, a small glimmer of what once was love, and mistake, and memory. Ethan, she whispers. I remember now. All of it. She pauses, breath trembling. I spent years punishing myself for surviving, for forgetting, for rewriting the story so I could sleep at night. Her voice cracks, a sound between confession and prayer. But I see it now. You weren't haunting me. You were waiting for me to tell the truth, to forgive myself. She closes her eyes. The air feels lighter, the silence less suffocating. And in that silence, for the first time, she hears something she hasn't heard in years. Her own heartbeat, steady, human, alive. The world is cruel in its beauty. It destroys to reveal, takes to teach. And if you survive the storm, it shows you that stillness isn't emptiness. It's grace. Later, she visits Ethan's grave. It's simple, a modest headstone under an old oak tree, the kind of place he would have chosen. Quiet, unpretentious, almost hidden. She kneels, places a white flower, and sits in silence. After a long pause, she begins to speak. You were right, she murmurs, about everything. I kept looking for gold in other people. But all this time, what needed to change was me. Her fingers brush the name engraved in stone. You taught me that love isn't ownership. It's reflection. And I broke that reflection because I was afraid of what I'd see. A tear falls on the grave, vanishing into the soil. Liam's alive, she adds. I saw him. He's different now. Maybe we both are. She smiles faintly. Maybe that's the point of surviving. Not to forget what happened, but to live in a way that honors what was lost. As days turn to weeks, she starts over. Not with grand gestures, just small, deliberate acts of living. The sound of coffee brewing in the morning, the warmth of sunlight on her skin, the weight of a book in her lap. Ordinary things, the kind she once thought too fragile for someone as broken as her. But maybe brokenness, she thinks, was never the opposite of living. Maybe it's the doorway to something real. We spend our lives fearing the crash, the loss, the fall, the failure. But we forget, every collision, every shattered illusion, is also an opening, the end of a lie, the beginning of truth. Pain doesn't erase us. It refines us. It strips away everything false, until only the essential remains. Claire walks to the shoreline that evening. The horizon burns gold as the sun sinks into the water. For the first time in years, she doesn't look over her shoulder. The tide hums softly, the eternal rhythm of something far older than guilt, far purer than fear. She whispers, I forgive you, and though no one is there to hear it, the sea seems to answer, a whisper back, a wave breaking against the rocks like absolution. There will always be wreckage, in memory, in love, in the fragile machinery of the heart. But beneath it, There will always be the stillness, the quiet pulse of something waiting to be reborn. Survival isn't the absence of pain. It's learning to breathe in its aftermath. And as the wind carries the scent of rain and salt, Claire smiles. The storm has passed, and she's still here, alive, changed, and finally free.